Wow, we have made it to question 100 of Prima Pars of the Summa Theologia. I don't know if anybody out there has watched all 100 videos so far, or at least the first 99 and now this one. But if so, I feel like I need to send you a medal or something. So congratulations. Keep plugging along, and I hope you are enjoying the journey through the Summa Theologia. This is another very brief question with only 2 articles. It's pretty straightforward, and it is about the condition of the offspring as regards righteousness. Now, this means the offspring of those parents in the state of original justice, original innocence, like Adam and Eve, and had they not sinned, any parents that would have followed along with them, like their children and their children's children and that kind of thing. But of course, we know how the story was interrupted by original sin, so it really only has to do with the children of Adam and Eve and whether that would have been the case. And so, like I said, just 2 articles, pretty brief, but they are interesting articles nonetheless. Whether men would have been born in a state of righteousness. Now, of course, Adam and Eve were not born. They were created by God. Adam created out of the slime of the earth, and then Eve through a rib of Adam. And so they're really, the children would have been the first ones that were born in the traditional sense. And what St. Thomas Aquinas is asking here is whether these children would have had immediately, when they were born, the same privilege, the same additional grace that was added on that their parents had in the state of righteousness, right? And this is pretty straightforward, and I'll kind of read this to you. It's just one short paragraph. He says, "Man naturally begets a specific likeness to himself. Hence, whatever accidental qualities result from the nature of the species must be alike in parent and child unless nature fails in its operation, which would not have occurred in the state of innocence." So he's kind of tipping his hand here and showing that he's going to say, yes, that this is an accidental quality. It's not something that is natural to Adam and Eve, but it was a superadded grace that was given to them. And what he's going to conclude here is that this would have been passed along to the children as well. But I'll read how St. Thomas Aquinas explains it. He said, "But individual accidents do not necessarily exist alike in parent and child. Now, original righteousness, in which the first man was created, was an accident pertaining to the nature of the species, not as caused by the principles of the species, but as a gift conferred by God on the entire human nature." Okay, this was a gift. It was not part of man's ordinary nature. That's what he's saying here. This is clear from the fact that opposites are of the same genus, and original sin, which is opposed to original righteousness, is called the sin of nature, wherefore it is transmitted from the parent to the offspring, and for this reason also the children would have been assimilated to their parents as regards original righteousness. So just as original sin would have been, or is, passed along from parent to child, even in the case of us today, he's saying, well, I think the same privilege would have been granted to that original righteousness as well, and that would have been passed on to the children. Article 2 goes a little bit further and says whether in the state of innocence children would have been confirmed in righteousness. By this he means, would it have been permanent? Would they have been able to fall away like, we know Adam and Eve did? You can probably guess what he's going to say about this, but I'll read Aquinas' answer. He says, "It does not seem possible that in the state of innocence children would have been born confirmed in righteousness, for it is clear that at their birth they would not have had greater perfection than their parents at the time of begetting. Now the parents, as long as they begot children, would not have been confirmed in righteousness. For the rational creature is confirmed in righteousness through the beatitude given by the clear vision of God, and when once it has seen God, it cannot but cleave to him who is the essence of goodness, wherefrom no one can turn away, since nothing is desired or loved but under the aspect of good." Now, we have talked about this before, and he will, of course, continue this way into at the end of the Summa, when he talks about the condition of heaven, that in heaven we maintain free will, but we will be united to God. And when you cleave to God as the goodness itself, it's impossible to turn away from that, because you're so close to God, so intimately united to Him, that you're irrevocably attached to God, and you can't sin. But what he's saying here is that was not the case with Adam and Eve, and it certainly is not the case with their children as well, where they could fall in righteousness, even though they would have been born in that original state of righteousness. These last couple of sentences are really interesting, because he brings in the Blessed Mother here. He says, I say this according to the general law. I just want to point out that Thomas very rarely uses first-person pronouns like I. It's rare. He normally just doesn't speak that way, but this one it's an exception. For it may be otherwise in the case of special privilege, such as we believe was granted to the Virgin Mother of God. So he's saying that, it's not generally passed on to children where they are confirmed in righteousness, but he's saying maybe, just maybe, that was passed on to the Blessed Virgin Mother of God, which is interesting, because he's also going to get the Immaculate Conception wrong. Okay, he did not teach the Immaculate Conception, but that dogma came many centuries after Aquinas, and so he wasn't being a heretic. He just didn't get that one right. And as soon as Adam had attained to that happy state of seeing God in his essence, he would have become spiritual in soul and body, and his animal life would have ceased, wherein alone there is generation. Hence it is clear that children would not have been born confirmed in righteousness. So that is hopefully pretty straightforward and pretty understandable, that Adam and Eve were not created confirmed in righteousness, and neither were their children, but they were born in righteousness, and that righteousness was passed on to the children. But there was a caveat that said, as long as you did not sin, you will remain in righteousness. But of course, they did sin. Well, congratulations, you have made it through 100 questions of the Summa. As I mentioned on day one, there are approximately 600 questions in the Summa, so we're about 1/6 through the entire Summa. Still a long way to go, but we're getting there. One question at a time. So pat yourself on the back if you've gotten this far and you've watched all these videos. Thank you for journeying with me one question at a time through the Summa Theologica. St. Thomas Aquinas, pray for us. God bless you.